If I was any more average, I'd be a spreadsheet. But my wife, she's an Excel formula that somehow learned to walk in designer heels and manipulate quarterly reports. Daniel Price, that's me. 38 years old, structural engineer, owner of a mortgage that could choke a horse and a marriage that's been feeling about as stable as a house built on quicksand. My wife Elise has this thing about business trips. Loves them. Lives for them, you might say. Every conference, same hotel, same miraculous room upgrade that she never seems surprised about. It's just good customer service, she'd tell me, adjusting her silk blouse in the hallway mirror before another departure. Grant knows people. He takes care of his team. Grant Wilcox. Her boss. 45 years old, drives a black Mercedes, and has the kind of smile that makes you want to count your fingers after shaking his hand. The man who's been providing Elise with so much mentorship lately that I'm starting to wonder if he's charging tuition. I'm sitting in my home office now, staring at a stack of hotel receipts I found tucked behind Elise's jewelry box. Funny thing about being an engineer, you notice patterns. Load distributions, stress points, structural weaknesses. And brother, this marriage has more red flags than a Chinese parade. The receipts tell a story, same hotel chain, always upgraded to suites, always with room service charges that could feed a small village, and always, without fail, when Grant Wilcox is attending the same conferences. What are the odds? My phone buzzes. Text from Elise. Conference running late. Grant says the networking dinner is mandatory. Home tomorrow instead of tonight. Love you. Love you. Right. The way a parasite loves its host. I lean back in my chair, listening to the house settle around me. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, granite countertops, and a foundation that's apparently more solid than my marriage. We bought this place 5 years ago, back when Elise still pretended to care about my engineering stories, and I still believed her when she said Grant was just a colleague. The thing about structural engineering is that you learn to spot the cracks before they become catastrophic failures. You identify the weak points, calculate the load-bearing capacity, and figure out what's holding everything together. Right now, I'm looking at my marriage like a condemned building, and I'm starting to think it's time for a controlled demolition. My sister Maddie calls it intuition. I call it paying attention. Like last month, when I came home early from work and found Elise on the phone in our bedroom, door closed, voice low and intimate. When she saw me, she switched gears faster than a NASCAR driver. Oh, hi honey, just talking to Jenna about the Peterson account. Jenna, her work friend. Except I happened to know Jenna was in Hawaii that week because she'd posted approximately 400 vacation photos on social media. When I mentioned this later, Elise laughed it off. You know how bad I am with names. It was probably Alex. Alex, who quit the company 6 months ago. But sure, let's go with that. The receipts in front of me paint a different picture. Adjoining suites, room service for 2, champagne charges, and at the bottom of the most recent one, handwritten in what I'm pretty sure is Grant's chicken scratch penmanship. Thanks for last night. Gee, thanks for last night. For what exactly? A rousing discussion of pharmaceutical sales strategies? A deep dive into market penetration techniques? My neighbor Brandon waves from across the street as he waters his perfectly manicured lawn. Brandon's the kind of guy who measures his grass with a ruler and probably has his garbage cans arranged alphabetically. He's also the neighborhood's unofficial gossip coordinator, which makes him surprisingly useful for gathering intelligence. Last week at the community barbecue, his wife Cindy made an interesting comment while we were standing around the grill, watching Brandon flip burgers with military precision. Elise is so lucky to have Grant as a mentor, she'd said, sipping her wine. He really takes her under his wing, doesn't he? All those conferences together, all that one-on-one guidance. The way she said guidance made it sound like a euphemism for something that definitely wasn't covered in the employee handbook. Yeah, I'd replied. He's very supportive. Oh, absolutely. Emotional support is so important in a high-pressure job like pharmaceutical sales. Emotional support. That's what Elise calls it when I ask about all the late-night phone calls, the weekend strategy sessions, the sudden need to attend every conference Grant recommends. Emotional support. I wonder if that comes with a dental plan. My phone rings. Mark, my best friend since college and the owner of a bar downtown called the Broken Compass. Appropriate name, considering most of the people who drink there have lost their way in life. Danny boy, he says, and I can hear the familiar background noise of his establishment. You sound like someone just told you Santa Claus is a tax evader. Just reviewing some paperwork, I tell him. The kind of paperwork that comes with hotel letterhead? Mark used to be a private investigator before he bought the bar. He has an instinct for trouble and a talent for spotting deception that's almost uncanny. I'd been dropping hints about Elise's behavior for weeks, and he'd been catching the subtext without missing a beat. You could say that. Want to meet for a drink? I've got some thoughts about emotional support that might interest you. I'll be there in 20. The Broken Compass sits on the edge of downtown, in one of those neighborhoods that's trying really hard to be trendy but hasn't quite shaken off its blue-collar roots. It's the kind of place where you can get a craft beer and a shot of whiskey, where the bartender knows your name but doesn't judge your life choices. Mark's behind the bar when I walk in, polishing glasses with the methodical precision of a man who's learned that keeping your hands busy helps keep your mind focused. He's got the build of someone who's been in a few scrapes and the eyes of someone who's seen enough human nature to stock a psychology textbook. So, he says, sliding a beer across the bar, we talking about the kind of emotional support that requires adjoining hotel rooms? I show him the receipts. He studies them like a detective examining evidence at a crime scene, which in a way he is. Your wife's got expensive taste in emotional support, he observes. Room service champagne, premium suites, charges for spa services. Either Grant's the most generous boss in corporate America, or he's getting a return on his investment. That's what I'm thinking. Question is, what are you going to do about it? I take a long drink of my beer, tasting the bitter hops and thinking about bitter truths. I'm going to be very methodical about this. Meaning? Meaning I'm going to treat this like any other engineering problem. Identify the structural weaknesses, calculate the load-bearing capacity, and figure out the most efficient way to bring the whole thing down. Mark grins, and it's not a particularly nice expression. Now you're talking my language. The next morning, I call my sister Maddie. She's a divorce attorney with a practice downtown and a reputation for being tougher than a $2 steak. She's also the only person I know who can make legal threats sound like friendly conversation. I need some advice, I tell her over the phone. Professional or familial? Both. Your place or mine? Yours. I don't want to have this conversation in the house. Maddie's office occupies the 15th floor of a glass tower that overlooks the harbor. Her corner office has a view that probably costs more in rent than most people make in a year, and her law degree hangs on the wall like a warning to anyone who might consider crossing her. She listens to my story without interruption, taking notes on a legal pad with the kind of focused attention that makes witnesses confess to crimes they didn't commit. How long has this been going on? She asks when I finish. Best guess? 6 months, maybe longer. Assets? Joint checking and savings, the house, my 401k, her 401k, some investments. Any prenup? No. She nods, making more notes. Good news is, Massachusetts is a no-fault state, so you don't need to prove adultery to get a divorce. Bad news is, it's also an equitable distribution state, which means she's entitled to roughly half of everything. Roughly half. Unless, she says, looking up from her notes with an expression I recognize from our childhood, the one she used to get right before she talked me into some scheme that would inevitably get us both in trouble. We can demonstrate that she's been using marital assets to fund her extracurricular activities. How would we do that? Very carefully and very legally. You're going to need documentation, records, evidence that can stand up in court. Think you can handle that? I think about the hotel receipts, the phone records I could subpoena, the credit card statements that would tell the whole story. I'm an engineer, Maddie. Documentation is what I do. Then let's build a case that's structurally sound. That afternoon, I start my investigation in earnest. I open a new checking account at a different bank, one that Elise doesn't know about. I rent a storage unit across town under my name only. I begin the slow, methodical process of documenting everything: dates, times, expenses, patterns of behavior. It's like reverse engineering a building. Instead of figuring out how to make something stand up, I'm figuring out how to make it fall down in exactly the right way. Elise comes home that evening with a smile that's a little too bright and a story that's a little too rehearsed. The conference was amazing. Grant's presentation was inspiring, and the networking opportunities were incredible. How was the hotel? I asked casually. Oh, standard business hotel stuff. Nothing special. Nothing special. Right. Just champagne room service and spa treatments that cost more than most people's car payments. Grant treating his team well? He's very generous with the conference budget. Really believes in investing in professional development. Professional development. Is that what they're calling it now? That night, lying in bed next to my wife, I listen to her breathing and think about structural integrity, about load-bearing walls and foundation cracks, and the precise moment when a building stops being a home and becomes a hazard that needs to be condemned. Tomorrow, Elise leaves for another conference, another opportunity for emotional support and professional development, another chance for Grant to demonstrate his generosity. But this time, I'll be ready. This time, I'm going to provide some support of my own. The beautiful thing about being married to someone for 8 years is that you learn their patterns. Elise packs the same way every time. Business clothes folded with military precision, toiletries arranged in order of use, everything organized like she's preparing for inspection rather than a pharmaceutical sales conference. I watch her from the doorway of our bedroom, coffee mug in hand, playing the role of the supportive husband seeing his wife off on another important business trip. How long this time? I ask. Just 3 days? Grant wants the team to attend some additional workshops after the main conference. She doesn't look at me when she says it, focusing instead on arranging her shoes in the garment bag like they're pieces of a puzzle. Grant wants. Of course he does. Same hotel as usual? The Marriott downtown. You know how Grant is about consistency. I know exactly how Grant is. Consistent in his choice of hotels, consistent in his room upgrade requests, consistent in his mentorship techniques. Well, have fun. Learn lots. She kisses me goodbye, and it feels about as genuine as a $3 bill. Her lips are cool, distracted, already somewhere else, already with someone else. The door closes behind her, and I count to 60 before moving to the window. Her silver Lexus backs out of the driveway, turns left toward the highway, and disappears around the corner. Phase 1 complete. I call in sick to work. Not entirely a lie, I am feeling a little under the weather about my marriage. Then I call Mark. She's gone, I tell him. Time to get to work? Time to get to work. The storage unit I rented is one of those climate-controlled places that looks like a suburban office park had a baby with a prison. Unit 247 is mine for the next 6 months, paid in cash, registered under my name only. It's going to be my base of operations for the next phase of this project. Mark meets me there with his pickup truck and a grin that suggests he's enjoying this more than he probably should. You sure about this? He asks as we stand in front of the empty unit. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. We start with the non-essentials. Books, old electronics, seasonal clothes, the kind of stuff that won't be missed immediately but adds up to a significant volume. Box after box disappears into the storage unit like we're feeding some kind of cardboard-eating monster. Your wife's not going to notice all this missing? Mark asks as we load another box of winter coats. Elise notices 2 things, her appearance and her bank account. Everything else is just background noise. It takes us 6 hours to clear out what I estimate to be about 30% of our household belongings. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to make a difference. The house feels slightly hollow now, like an echo chamber that's lost some of its resonance. That evening, I sit in my home office and begin the next phase, financial reconnaissance. Joint accounts, credit cards, investment portfolios, the digital paper trail of our shared life. It's all there, laid out in spreadsheets and statements like a roadmap to dissolution. The hotel charges jump out like neon signs, monthly charges to the same hotel chain, always during conference weeks, always for amounts that suggest someone's living very well on the company dime. Or, in this case, on our dime, since Elise's credit cards are tied to our joint accounts. I start making copies. Paper copies, digital copies, screenshots, downloads. Everything documented, everything preserved, everything organized with the methodical precision of someone who's spent 20 years making sure buildings don't fall down. My phone buzzes. Text from Elise. Arrived safely. Conference starts early tomorrow. Long day ahead. I text back. Miss you already. Have a great time. The lies come so easily now. Maybe they always did. The next morning, I call Maddie. Phase 2? She asks. Phase 2. We meet at her office again, but this time I come armed with documentation. Bank statements, credit card bills, hotel receipts, phone records that I've legally obtained through our joint account access. It's like presenting a case study in marital fraud. Maddie reviews everything with the focused attention of a surgeon examining x-rays. This is good, she says finally. Really good. You've got a clear pattern of marital assets being used to fund what appears to be an extramarital relationship. Appears to be? We can't prove what's happening in those hotel rooms, but we can prove that your wife is spending significant amounts of joint money on activities that don't benefit the marriage. That's enough. Enough for what? Enough to ensure that when this goes to court, the judge is going to look very unfavorably on her claims to marital assets, especially if we can show that you've been the more financially responsible party. She slides a set of papers across her desk. Divorce filing. I've already prepared everything. We just need your signature, and we can serve her whenever you're ready. I look at the papers, at the legal language that will transform 8 years of marriage into a series of property divisions and custody arrangements. No kids, thank God. At least we don't have to traumatize any innocent bystanders. When should we serve her? That depends. How dramatic do you want this to be? I think about all those hotel receipts, all those lies about emotional support, all those nights I lay awake wondering what was wrong with me that my wife needed to find her emotional fulfillment in someone else's bed. I want it to be memorable. Then we wait until she comes home from this conference. Let her walk into whatever surprise you're planning, and then we hit her with the papers. Maximum impact. What kind of surprise are you thinking? Maddie's smile is sharp enough to cut glass. That's up to you. But remember, everything you do from now on is going to be scrutinized in court. Keep it legal, keep it clean, and keep it documented. That afternoon, I take a personal day and drive to the bank. Our bank, where we've had joint accounts for 6 years, where the tellers know us by name and always ask about our vacation plans. I'd like to make some changes to our account structure, I tell the branch manager, a woman named Patricia, who's helped us with everything from our mortgage to our investment planning. What kind of changes, Mr. Price? I'd like to transfer funds from our joint accounts into individual accounts. I'm planning a surprise for my wife, and I don't want her to see the transactions on our statements. It's not entirely a lie. It is going to be a surprise. Patricia walks me through the process. As a joint account holder, I have every right to move money around as I see fit. Within an hour, I've transferred 60% of our liquid assets into accounts that only I can access. Not enough to constitute hiding assets, but enough to ensure that Elise can't clean us out while I'm implementing my plan. Planning something special? Patricia asks as she prints out the new account information. You could say that. I'm hoping it's something she'll never forget. That evening, I get another text from Elise. Conference dinner running late. Grant's introducing me to some important clients. This could be big for my career. I'll bet it could. I wonder if Grant's important clients know their part of his seduction strategy, or if they think they're just having dinner with a pharmaceutical sales rep who happens to be very dedicated to her professional development. I text back, That's wonderful, honey. I'm so proud of you. The lies are getting easier. I spend the rest of the evening boxing up more belongings, photo albums, books, electronics, kitchen appliances we never use. Everything goes into boxes. Everything gets labeled and cataloged. Everything disappears into the storage unit like evidence being prepared for trial. By the time I go to bed, the house feels noticeably emptier. Not empty enough to be obvious, but empty enough that someone paying attention might notice. Of course, Elise hasn't been paying attention to much of anything at home lately, so I'm probably safe. The next morning brings another text. Last day of conference. Grant wants to extend the trip by 1 day for additional client meetings. Hope that's okay? Additional client meetings. Right. I wonder if these clients charge by the hour or by the service. I text back, Of course. Take all the time you need. And I mean it. The more time she takes, the more time I have to prepare her homecoming surprise. I call the moving company that afternoon, a local outfit called Reliable Relocations that Mark recommended. They specialize in short notice moves and don't ask too many questions as long as the check clears. I need a truck and 2 guys tomorrow morning, I tell the dispatcher. Full house move, but we'll have everything boxed and ready. How many rooms? 3 bedrooms, but most of the stuff is already in storage. This should be pretty straightforward. We can have a crew there at 8 a.m. Perfect. That night, I pack the last of my personal belongings. Clothes, toiletries, important documents, family photos, everything that matters to me, everything that represents who I am, independent of this marriage. It all fits into 6 boxes and 2 suitcases, which either says something about my minimalist lifestyle or about how little of myself I've been allowed to keep in this relationship. I sit in the living room, surrounded by boxes and empty spaces where furniture used to be, and think about structural engineering, about controlled demolitions, where you place charges at precisely the right points to bring a building down exactly the way you want it to fall. Tomorrow, Elise comes home from her conference, her emotional support session, her professional development retreat. She'll expect to find her husband waiting with a smile and a, "How was your trip, honey?" Instead, she's going to find something else entirely, something that's going to provide her with a very different kind of support, the kind where she gets to support herself. Thursday morning arrives with the kind of crisp autumn clarity that makes everything look like it's been outlined in black ink. Perfect weather for a controlled demolition. The moving truck pulls into my driveway at exactly 8 a.m., followed by Mark in his pickup. 2 guys get out of the truck, Tony and Steve, both built like they've been moving furniture since the Carter administration. They take one look at the boxes stacked in my garage and nod approvingly. "You weren't kidding about having everything ready," Tony says. "This is going to be the easiest job we've had all month." If only he knew. The process is remarkably efficient. Box after box disappears into the truck, followed by furniture, appliances, electronics. Everything I've decided I want to keep, everything that represents my half of 8 years of accumulated possessions. The house empties out like water draining from a bathtub. "Where's the wife?" Steve asks as they carry out the dining room table. "Business trip," I tell him. "She's going to be so surprised when she sees how much space we have now." Mark catches my eye and grins. He's enjoying this way too much, but I have to admit, there's something deeply satisfying about watching my old life get packed into boxes and driven away. By noon, it's done. The house stands mostly empty, echoing with the hollow sound that comes when a home stops being lived in and starts being just a structure. I walk through the rooms one last time, checking for anything I might have missed, any detail that might spoil the effect. In the master bedroom, I leave behind the bed, the dresser, and Elise's clothes. Her space, her things, her responsibility now. The guest bedroom is completely empty except for a single box I've left on the floor. The living room contains one chair, one lamp, and one side table. Just enough furniture to make it clear that someone made very deliberate choices about what to take and what to leave. In the kitchen, I've left the refrigerator, the stove, and one place setting. One plate, one cup, one set of silverware. Everything else, the dishes we got as wedding presents, the expensive pots and pans Elise insisted we needed, the gadgets that promised to revolutionize our cooking but mostly just took up counter space, all gone. The effect is stark, almost artistic, like a museum exhibit titled "The Remains of a Marriage." Mark helps me do a final walkthrough. "Think she'll get the message?" he asks. If she doesn't, I left her a note to clarify things. The note sits on the kitchen counter, propped against the single remaining coffee mug. White paper, black ink, 11 words that represent the end of everything we built together. "Support yourself now. I hope Grant's emotional support was worth it." My phone buzzes. Text from Elise. "Heading to airport soon. Flight lands at 6:30. Can't wait to see you." I text back, "I'll be here waiting." Technically true, I will be here, just not in the way she's expecting. I spend the afternoon at the storage unit, organizing my new temporary life. The unit is climate-controlled and surprisingly spacious, big enough for all my belongings, plus a small living area I've set up in one corner. A cot, a folding table, a camping chair, and a battery-powered lantern. It's not the Ritz, but it's mine. Mark brings sandwiches and beer, and we sit in my new bachelor pad, surrounded by the boxed remains of my marriage. "You nervous?" he asks. Strangely, no. I feel like I've been holding my breath for months, and I'm finally about to exhale. What's the plan for tonight? I'm going to sit in that empty house and wait for her to come home. I want to see her face when she walks in. I want to watch her realize that actions have consequences. And then? And then Maddie serves her with divorce papers, and we let the legal system sort out the details. Think she'll fight it? I consider this, thinking about the woman I married versus the woman who's been lying to me for months about emotional support and professional development. She'll try, but she's going to have a hard time explaining those hotel receipts to a judge. At 5:30, I drive back to the house. My house, technically, since my name is on the deed and I'm the one who's been making the mortgage payments. I park in the garage and walk through the empty rooms one more time, checking the acoustics, imagining how Elise's voice will sound when she calls out, "Honey, I'm home," and hears her words echo back from bare walls. At 6:15, I position myself in the single remaining chair in the living room, facing the front door. I have a clear view of the entryway, the stairs, and the kitchen. Perfect sightlines for what's about to unfold. At 6:43, I hear her car in the driveway. At 6:45, I hear her key in the lock. At 6:46, Elise Price walks into her new reality. "Daniel, I'm home." Her voice carries through the empty house like a shout in a cathedral, bouncing off walls and echoing back with a hollow quality that makes her sound small and lost. I don't answer. I just sit in my chair and wait. I hear her heels clicking on the hardwood floor as she moves through the entryway. The clicking stops abruptly, and I know she's noticed that the coat closet is empty, that the umbrella stand is gone, that the small table where we used to keep our keys and mail has vanished. "Daniel?" Her voice is different now, uncertain. "What happened to the furniture?" Still, I wait. The clicking resumes, faster now, as she moves toward the living room. I hear her gasp when she sees the empty space where our couch used to be, where our entertainment center once stood, where 8 years of accumulated comfort used to make this place feel like home. And then she appears in the doorway, still wearing her business travel outfit, pulling her wheeled suitcase behind her like a lost tourist who's wandered into the wrong hotel room. She sees me sitting in the single chair, and her face goes through a series of expressions that would be comical if they weren't so perfectly illustrative of someone's world falling apart in real time. confusion, disbelief, dawning comprehension, and finally, panic. Daniel, what is this? Where is everything? What happened? I look at her calmly, taking in the details of her appearance. She looks good, I have to admit. Refreshed. Glowing even. 3 days of emotional support and professional development have apparently agreed with her. How was the conference? I ask. What? The conference? It was... Daniel, where is our furniture? I moved it. You moved it? Where? Why? I moved it somewhere safe, somewhere it won't be part of whatever this has become. She stares at me, and I can see her trying to process what she's seeing, trying to understand how she left a fully furnished home 3 days ago and came back to what looks like a crime scene. I don't understand, she says, and for the first time in months, I believe she's telling me the truth. Check the kitchen, I suggest. I left you something. She hesitates, then turns and walks toward the kitchen, her heels echoing in the empty space. I hear her find the note, hear the paper rustling as she picks it up and reads it. The silence that follows is profound. Not just quiet, but the kind of deep, absolute silence that comes when someone's entire understanding of reality shifts beneath their feet. When she returns to the living room, she's holding the note in one hand and her phone in the other. Her face has gone pale, and there's something in her eyes that I haven't seen in years, genuine fear. Daniel, I can explain. Can you? Because I'd love to hear how you explain 6 months of hotel receipts, champagne charges, and spa treatments that somehow qualify as emotional support. She opens her mouth, closes it, opens it again. For someone who makes a living selling pharmaceutical products to doctors, she's remarkably at a loss for words. It's not what you think, she finally manages. It's not? Then what is it exactly? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my wife has been using our joint accounts to fund her relationship with her boss. It looks like emotional support is just a euphemism for something that requires adjoining hotel suites and room service champagne. Grant and I, we're not... You're not what? Having an affair? Because I've got documentation that suggests otherwise. I've got receipts, Elise. Literal receipts. She looks around the empty room like she's trying to find something to anchor herself to, some piece of familiar territory in this suddenly alien landscape. You can't just take everything, she says. This is my home, too. Is it? Because you haven't been acting like someone who considers this place home. You've been acting like someone who considers this place a convenient base of operations between emotional support sessions. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been telling me you were unhappy instead of lying to me for months. Fair would have been asking for a divorce instead of spending our money on your relationship with Grant. Fair would have been treating me like a human being instead of an obstacle to your professional development. She's crying now, and part of me feels bad about that. The part that remembers falling in love with her, that remembers planning a future together, that remembers believing we were building something that would last. But that part is getting smaller by the minute. I never meant for this to happen, she says. Which part? The lying, the cheating, or the getting caught? Before she can answer, the doorbell rings. We both look toward the front door, and I check my watch. 7:30, right on schedule. Excuse me, I say, standing up from my chair. I believe that's for you. I walk to the front door and open it. Maddie stands on the porch, looking professional and implacable in her lawyer suit, holding a manila envelope that contains the end of my marriage. Good evening, Daniel, she says. Is Mrs. Price available? She's in the living room. Come on in. Maddie follows me back to where Elise is standing, still holding my note, still looking like someone who's been hit by a truck and isn't sure which direction it came from. Mrs. Price, Maddie says, extending the envelope, you've been served. Elise takes the envelope with shaking hands, staring at it like it might explode. Divorce papers, I explain helpfully. I thought you might want to review them while you're deciding how to support yourself. She looks at me, then at Maddie, then back at me. Daniel, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can fix this. Fix what, exactly? Your relationship with Grant? Because I'm pretty sure that's beyond my area of expertise. My relationship with Grant is over. It was never serious. It was just what? Emotional support? She nods, tears streaming down her face. It was a mistake, a stupid, stupid mistake. You're right about that, but the mistake wasn't the affair, Elise. The mistake was thinking you could lie to me indefinitely and I'd never figure it out. Maddie clears her throat. Mrs. Price, you'll want to review those documents carefully. You have 30 days to respond. I'd recommend getting your own attorney. I don't want an attorney. I want my husband. Then you should have thought about that before you decided you needed emotional support from someone else. I walk to the front door and hold it open. The message is clear. Maddie leaves first, giving me a small nod that says everything went according to plan. Elise follows more slowly, dragging her suitcase behind her, still clutching the divorce papers like they're evidence of some crime she can't quite believe she's been accused of. At the threshold, she turns back to me one last time. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know, I tell her. Maybe Grant can provide some emotional support. She flinches like I've slapped her, and for a moment I almost feel sorry for her. Almost. Daniel, please. Support yourself now, Elise. You're good at that, right? I close the door and lock it, leaving her standing on the porch with her suitcase and her divorce papers and the sudden realization that actions have consequences. Through the window, I watch her walk to her car, load her suitcase into the trunk, and sit behind the wheel for a long time without starting the engine. She's probably calling Grant, I realize, probably asking for some emergency emotional support. I hope he's available. I hope his calendar is clear. Because she's going to need all the support she can get. After her car disappears down the street, I walk through the empty house one more time, listening to the echo of my footsteps and thinking about structural engineering. About how sometimes, when a building is too damaged to repair, the kindest thing you can do is bring it down cleanly and start over with a solid foundation. My phone buzzes. Text from Mark. How did it go? I text back. Controlled demolition successful. No casualties. Celebration drink? I look around the empty house, at the single chair in the living room and the single place setting in the kitchen, at the bare walls and the hollow spaces where my marriage used to be. Absolutely, I text back. I've got a lot to celebrate. The funny thing about blowing up your own life is how quiet everything gets afterward. Not peaceful quiet, more like the ringing silence that follows a controlled explosion when the dust is still settling and you're not quite sure what's left standing. I spend the night in the empty house, sleeping on an air mattress I borrowed from Mark, staring at the ceiling and listening to sounds I never noticed when the place was full of furniture and the illusion of a happy marriage. The heating system cycling on and off, the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the house settling into its foundation with small creaks and sighs that sound almost like conversation. My phone buzzes intermittently throughout the night. Texts from Elise that I don't read, voicemails I don't listen to. Whatever she has to say, I'm pretty sure I've heard it all before. Besides, she's got divorce papers to review and her own attorney to find. She's going to be busy. Friday morning brings coffee from a single-serving machine and breakfast from a box of cereal I eat standing at the kitchen counter. The morning routine of a newly single man in an empty house, and honestly, it's not as depressing as I thought it would be. There's something liberating about eating cereal straight from the box without someone commenting on my table manners. I call into work and take another personal day. My boss, Mr. Cobb, is understanding about family emergencies, especially when you've been a reliable employee for 6 years and rarely take time off. Everything okay, Price? He asks. Just some domestic issues to sort out. Should be back to normal next week. Normal. Right. I'm going to have to figure out what that means now. Around 10 a.m., my neighbor Brandon appears at my front door, looking like a man with questions that need answers. Brandon's the unofficial neighborhood watch coordinator, which means he notices everything and has opinions about most of it. Morning, Daniel, he says when I open the door. Saw the moving truck yesterday? Everything all right? Just making some changes, Brandon. Downsizing a bit. He peers past me into the empty living room with the expression of someone trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. Where's Elise? She's adjusting to the changes. Adjusting? She's staying somewhere else for a while. We're taking some time to figure things out. It's not exactly a lie. She is staying somewhere else, and we are figuring things out. We're just figuring out how to divide our assets and end our marriage rather than how to save it. Brandon nods sagely, like he's seen this movie before. Marriage is tough, buddy. Cindy and I went through a rough patch a few years back. Counseling really helped. I'll keep that in mind. You need anything? Cindy made a casserole. She always makes casseroles when there's a crisis in the neighborhood. That's very kind, but I'm fine, really. After Brandon leaves, I realize that the neighborhood gossip network is going to be buzzing within hours. By this afternoon, everyone on Maple Street will know that the Prices are having problems. By this evening, they'll have theories about what kind of problems. By tomorrow, they'll probably have the whole story figured out, or at least a version of it that's close enough to the truth to be embarrassing. Good. Let them talk. Elise always cared more about what the neighbors thought than I did. My phone rings. Maddie. How are you holding up? She asks. Better than expected. It's quiet here. I'll bet. Any word from Elise? She's been texting, but I haven't read them. Figured I'd let her process things for a day or two before we start negotiating. Smart. Let her panic a little. People make better decisions when they realize how much they have to lose. Speaking of which, what does she have to lose? Well, let's see. The house is in your name, purchased before the marriage with your down payment. Most of the furniture was either yours before the marriage or purchased with funds from accounts you primarily contributed to. The major joint assets are the checking and savings accounts, which you've already protected, and her 401k versus your 401k. So she gets her retirement account, and what else? Whatever the judge decides is equitable. But given the evidence we have of her using marital funds for her relationship with Grant, I'd say she's looking at significantly less than half of the joint assets. And the house? She might be entitled to some equity, but given that you've been making the mortgage payments and she's been spending money on hotel rooms with her boss, I like our chances of keeping that to a minimum. After Maddie hangs up, I spend some time thinking about equity. Not the financial kind, but the other kind, the fairness kind, the justice kind. For months, Elise has been living two lives. A dutiful wife at home, passionate lover on business trips. She's been using our money to fund her relationship with Grant while lying to my face about emotional support and professional development. She's been coming home from her conferences refreshed and glowing, probably comparing me unfavorably to her exciting new lover, wondering why her boring engineer husband couldn't be more like her dynamic boss. Now she gets to find out what it's like to support herself, to make her own decisions, pay her own bills, and deal with the consequences of her choices without a safety net. It seems equitable to me. Around noon, I drive to Mark's bar for lunch and a debriefing. The lunch crowd at the Broken Compass consists mainly of people who work nights or don't work at all, plus a few folks like me who are taking personal days to sort out their personal disasters. You look surprisingly good for a guy who just nuked his marriage, Mark observes as he slides a burger across the bar. I feel surprisingly good. It's like I've been carrying around a weight I didn't realize was there, and suddenly it's gone. No regrets? I think about this while I eat my burger. Do I regret the end of my marriage? Do I regret 8 years of building a life with someone who turned out to be someone else entirely? I regret that it came to this, I finally say. I regret that she felt like she needed to lie to me instead of just telling me she was unhappy. I regret that she chose to have an affair instead of asking for a divorce. But do I regret ending it? No, I think I'd regret not ending it more. What's next? Next, I figure out how to be single again. It's been a while. You'll remember, it's like riding a bicycle, except the bicycle is your life and you get to decide where to go. That afternoon, I start making practical decisions about my immediate future. I can't stay in the empty house indefinitely. It's too big, too expensive, and too full of memories. I need to find a place of my own, something that's mine from the beginning instead of something I'm trying to salvage from the wreckage of my marriage. I spend a few hours looking at apartment listings online, one-bedroom places mostly, in neighborhoods that are convenient to work but far enough from Maple Street that I won't run into Elise at the grocery store. I make appointments to see 3 places over the weekend. Around 5 p.m., my phone rings. Unknown number. Daniel, it's Grant. Grant Wilcox. Elise's boss, mentor, and emotional support provider. The man who's been helping my wife develop professionally in hotel suites across the region. Grant, how nice to hear from you. Listen, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Elise is very upset, and I think maybe we should talk. About what? About this situation. About what happened between Elise and me. I think you've got the wrong idea. Do I? Because I've got hotel receipts that suggest my idea is pretty accurate. Those receipts? Look, I can explain those. The company has a policy about conference accommodations. We book adjoining rooms for security reasons, and the charges you're seeing are legitimate business expenses. Security reasons. That's right. When you're dealing with sensitive pharmaceutical data, you need to be careful about industrial espionage. The adjoining rooms allow the team to work together securely. And the champagne? The spa treatments? The room service for 2? Those are security measures too? There's a pause. Daniel, I think you're reading too much into some routine business expenses. Grant, let me ask you something. Are you married? Yes, but how do you think your wife would feel about your security measures? About your team building exercises? About your professional development techniques? Another pause, longer this time. My wife doesn't need to know the details of my business travel. Doesn't she? Because I'm thinking she might be very interested in those details. I'm thinking she might have some questions about your security protocols. Daniel, you don't want to do this. You don't want to make this more complicated than it needs to be. Actually, Grant, I think you're the one who made this complicated. I'm just simplifying it. What do you want? I want you to leave me alone. I want you to stop calling me. I want you to deal with your own marriage and let me deal with mine. And Elise? What about her? She needs this job. She's good at what she does. Then I guess she should have thought about that before she decided that emotional support was more important than professional ethics. I hang up before he can respond. Interesting. Grant is worried about his wife finding out, which means Victoria Wilcox doesn't know about her husband's mentorship techniques, which means Grant has just as much to lose as Elise does, maybe more. That evening, I order Chinese takeout and eat it sitting in my single chair, using chopsticks from the restaurant and drinking beer from a bottle. It's probably the most relaxed meal I've had in months. My phone buzzes. Text from a number I don't recognize. This is Victoria Wilcox. I think we should talk. Well, that's interesting. I text back. I'm listening. Not over text. Can we meet somewhere? Tomorrow? Where did you have in mind? Somewhere public. Somewhere we can have a private conversation without being overheard. I think about this. Victoria Wilcox wants to meet with me, which means she knows something about her husband's business travel habits, which means Grant's security protocols haven't been as secure as he thought. The park on Elm Street. There's a coffee cart near the playground. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. I'll be there. I finish my Chinese food and think about structural engineering, about how sometimes, when you remove one load-bearing element, the whole structure shifts in ways you didn't expect, about how sometimes the building you thought you were bringing down takes a few other buildings with it. Grant Wilcox is about to learn about unintended consequences, and I'm about to learn that I'm not the only one who's been paying attention to patterns. Saturday morning arrives gray and drizzly, the kind of New England weather that makes you want to stay inside with coffee and a good book. Instead, I'm walking through Elm Street Park at 10 a.m., looking for a woman I've never met who wants to discuss our mutual problem. I spot her immediately. Victoria Wilcox sits on a bench near the coffee cart, wearing dark jeans and a navy peacoat, looking like someone who's dressed for a covert operation rather than a casual weekend meeting. She's attractive in the way that women who marry successful men often are, polished, put together, expensive, but there's something in her posture that suggests she's not here for small talk. Mrs. Wilcox, I approach the bench cautiously. Victoria, and you must be Daniel. She stands and extends her hand. Her grip is firm, businesslike. Thank you for meeting me. I have to admit, I'm curious about what you want to discuss. I think you know exactly what I want to discuss. The question is whether you're interested in discussing it constructively. I buy 2 coffees from the cart and we sit on the bench, watching joggers and dog walkers navigate the park paths while we figure out how to begin a conversation about our respective cheating spouses. How long have you known? I ask finally. About Grant and your wife? About 6 weeks? You? I started suspecting about 3 months ago. I got confirmation this week. She nods, sipping her coffee. Grant's not as careful as he thinks he is. Hotel receipts on the corporate credit card, phone calls at odd hours, sudden interest in conferences he used to send other people to attend. You confronted him? I hired a private investigator first. I wanted to be sure before I did anything irreversible. Smart. Victoria Wilcox is clearly not the type to act on suspicion alone. What did you find? She reaches into her purse and pulls out a manila folder. Photos, hotel records, credit card statements, phone logs, everything you'd need to prove an affair in court. I flip through the folder. It's comprehensive, professional, devastating. Photos of Grant and Elise entering hotel elevators together, leaving restaurants, walking through conference centers with the kind of body language that suggests they're much more than colleagues. This is thorough. I don't do anything halfway. When I realized my husband was cheating, I decided to document it properly. Have you confronted him yet? No, I wanted to talk to you first. Why? She turns to face me directly, and I see something in her eyes that I recognize from my own mirror, the cold, calculated anger of someone who's been betrayed and is planning their response carefully. Because Grant and your wife have put us in similar positions. They've used our marriages as cover for their affair, spent our money on their relationship, and lied to our faces for months. I think we can help each other make sure they face appropriate consequences. What kind of consequences? The kind that hurt. Grant makes good money, but he also has expensive tastes and significant financial obligations. Alimony, child support from his first marriage, country club memberships, car payments on that ridiculous Mercedes. A divorce is going to be financially devastating for him, especially if I can prove he was using marital assets to fund his affair. And Elise? Your wife works for Grant. If this affair becomes public knowledge at their company, what do you think happens to her career? I consider this. Elise has worked hard to build her reputation in pharmaceutical sales. She's good at her job, makes decent money, has built relationships with doctors and hospitals throughout the region. A scandal involving her boss would probably end all of that. You're talking about destroying both their careers. I'm talking about consequences. They made choices, and choices have outcomes. I'm simply ensuring that the outcomes are proportional to the choices. There's something appealing about Victoria's approach. It's methodical, comprehensive, and completely ruthless. She's not interested in revenge for its own sake. She's interested in justice, in making sure that the people who betrayed us pay a price that reflects the magnitude of their betrayal. What exactly are you proposing? Coordination. We file for divorce simultaneously, using the evidence we've both gathered. We make sure the company finds out about the affair through official channels, HR complaints, ethics violations, that sort of thing. We ensure that their professional reputations are damaged in proportion to the damage they've done to our marriages. You want to ruin them. I want them to experience consequences. Right now, they're living in a fantasy where they can have their affair and their careers and their comfortable lives. I want to introduce them to reality. I drink my coffee and think about this. Part of me is tempted by Victoria's plan. There's a certain elegant symmetry to it, a sense of proportional justice that appeals to my engineering mindset. But another part of me wonders if I really want to spend my energy on elaborate revenge schemes. I've already served Elise with divorce papers, I tell her. I know, but Grant called me in a panic yesterday asking if I knew anything about it. He's worried that his affair is going to become public knowledge. What did you tell him? I told him I had no idea what he was talking about. I'm very good at playing dumb when it suits my purposes. And what are your purposes exactly? She stands up and walks to the edge of the pond, where ducks are paddling around looking for handouts from park visitors. I follow her, sensing that we're getting to the heart of whatever she's planning. My purpose is to make sure that when this is over, Grant and your wife understand that actions have consequences, that you can't betray people who trust you without paying a price, that emotional support comes with a cost. You heard about the emotional support thing? Grant used the same line on me, said he was providing emotional support to a team member who was going through a difficult time, said it was part of his management responsibilities. And you believed him? For about 5 minutes. Then I started paying attention to the details, and the details told a different story. We stand by the pond in comfortable silence for a while, watching the ducks and thinking about betrayal and consequences and the price of emotional support. If we do this, I say finally, if we coordinate our response, what's the timeline? I file for divorce on Monday. You've already filed, so we're synchronized there. I submit a formal complaint to their company's HR department on Tuesday, documenting the affair and the misuse of corporate resources. By Wednesday, they're both dealing with legal proceedings and employment investigations simultaneously. And then? And then we let the system work. Divorce courts, corporate HR departments, professional licensing boards if applicable. We don't have to do anything dramatic or illegal. We just have to make sure the right people have the right information at the right time. It's a solid plan. Clean, legal, devastating. The kind of systematic destruction that leaves no fingerprints but achieves maximum impact. I need to think about this. Of course, but don't think too long. Every day we wait is another day they get to enjoy their affair without consequences. She hands me her business card. Victoria Wilcox, Senior Vice President, Marketing, at a company I've heard of but never dealt with. She's not just Grant's wife, she's a successful professional in her own right, which explains the methodical approach to destroying her husband's life. Call me when you decide, she says. But Daniel? Yes? They've had months to enjoy their emotional support arrangement. Don't you think it's time they supported themselves? After Victoria leaves, I sit on the bench for another hour, drinking cold coffee and thinking about justice versus revenge, consequences versus cruelty, proportional response versus nuclear warfare. Grant and Elise made choices. They chose to lie, to cheat, to use our marriages as cover for their affair. They chose to spend our money on their relationship while pretending to be faithful spouses. They chose to treat us like obstacles to their happiness rather than partners in their lives. Victoria is offering me a chance to ensure that their choices have appropriate consequences. Not revenge, consequences. There's a difference, even if the end result looks similar. By the time I leave the park, I've made my decision. I call Victoria that evening. I'm in, I tell her. Let's make sure they get all the support they deserve. Excellent. I'll see you in divorce court. Victoria? Yes? Thank you. For the first time since this started, I feel like I'm not facing this alone. You're not alone, Daniel, and neither are they. Grant and Elise are about to discover that they have each other's support. Will that be enough? I guess we're about to find out. Monday morning arrives with the kind of crisp clarity that makes everything look sharp-edged and unforgiving. Perfect weather for ending marriages and destroying careers. I'm sitting in my office at Morrison Engineering, trying to focus on structural load calculations while my phone buzzes with increasingly frantic messages from Elise. I haven't read them, but I can guess the content. Panic, pleading, promises to change, threats to fight the divorce. The usual stages of grief, compressed into text message form. At exactly 9 a.m., my phone rings. Maddie. Victoria Wilcox just filed for divorce, she reports. Simultaneous service with yours. Grant got his papers about 10 minutes ago, according to my contact at the courthouse. How do you know that? Because Victoria's attorney is someone I went to law school with. We coordinated the timing. And the HR complaint? That goes in tomorrow, as planned. Victoria's been very thorough in her documentation. I lean back in my chair and imagine Grant Wilcox sitting in his corner office right now, staring at divorce papers and trying to figure out how his carefully managed double life just collapsed in the span of a weekend. I imagine him calling Elise, both of them realizing that their emotional support arrangement has suddenly become very expensive. Any word from Elise? She called this morning, wants to meet, wants to negotiate, wants to work things out. I told her she needs to get her own attorney and that all communication goes through legal channels from now on. Good. Daniel, are you sure about this coordinated approach? It's going to be brutal for both of them. I think about hotel receipts and lies about emotional support, about months of coming home to a wife who was physically present but emotionally invested in someone else, about the slow erosion of trust and the careful construction of deception. I'm sure. That afternoon, I get a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answer it. Daniel, this is Grant. We need to talk. No, we don't. Yes, we do. This thing with Victoria, with the divorce papers, it's gotten out of hand. We need to figure out how to contain this. Contain what? The situation, the misunderstanding, whatever you want to call it. I'd call it the consequences of your choices, but that's just me. Daniel, listen to me. Victoria is not thinking clearly. She's angry, and she's making decisions that are going to hurt everyone involved, including Elise. Elise made her own decisions, Grant. She can live with the consequences. But you don't understand. If this goes public, if the company gets involved, Elise could lose her job. Her career could be over. Should have thought about that before you started providing emotional support in hotel suites. It wasn't like that. What was it like? There's a long pause. It was complicated. Complicated? Right. Well, now it's simple. You're both getting divorced, and you both get to figure out how to support yourselves. Daniel, please. We can work this out. We can make this go away. Make what go away? Your affair, your lies, the hotel receipts, the months of deception? We can compensate you, financially. Make sure you're taken care of in the divorce settlement. I almost laugh. You want to buy me off? I want to find a solution that works for everyone. Here's a solution that works for me. You and Elise deal with the consequences of your choices, and I get on with my life. You're making a mistake, Daniel. Victoria is vindictive. She's going to destroy both of us, and she's going to enjoy doing it. That sounds like a problem for you and Elise to solve together. You know, emotional support. I hang up and immediately call Victoria. Grant just called me, I tell her. He's panicking. Good. Panic makes people make mistakes. What did he want? To contain the situation. To work out some kind of deal. And what did you tell him? I told him to support himself. Perfect. The HR complaint goes in tomorrow morning. By tomorrow afternoon, they'll both be dealing with employment investigations on top of divorce proceedings. Any second thoughts? None. You? I think about Grant's phone call, about his suggestion that Victoria is vindictive, about his concern for Elise's career. Then I think about months of lies and hotel receipts and emotional support that came with champagne service. None. Tuesday morning brings rain and the systematic destruction of two careers. Victoria's HR complaint is comprehensive, professional, and devastating. It documents the affair with dates, locations, and financial details. It demonstrates the misuse of corporate resources and the violation of company policies regarding relationships between supervisors and subordinates. Most importantly, it's completely factual and legally bulletproof. I'm in a meeting about foundation specifications when my phone buzzes with a text from Victoria. HR complaint filed. Investigation begins immediately. Both of them suspended pending review. Suspended. That means Elise is sitting at home right now, probably calling Grant, both of them realizing that their professional lives are collapsing along with their personal lives. Around noon, my phone rings. Elise. Daniel, please, I need to talk to you. Talk to your attorney. I don't have an attorney yet. I can't afford one. They suspended me from work. That sounds like a problem you need to solve. Daniel, please. They're going to fire me. My career is over. Everything I've worked for is gone. Should have thought about that before you decided you needed emotional support from your boss. It wasn't about the job. It wasn't about advancing my career or getting special treatment. I know that's what you think, but it wasn't like that. What was it like? I was lonely. You work all the time, and when you're home, you're thinking about work. We never talk anymore. We never do anything together. I felt like I was invisible. So you decided to become visible to Grant. It started as friendship. Just someone to talk to, someone who listened to me. The physical part. That happened later. How much later? Does it matter? It matters to me. There's a long pause. 3 months ago. The first time was 3 months ago. 3 months. While I was working late on the Henderson project, trying to make sure we could afford the vacation to Italy that Elise had been planning. While I was putting in extra hours so we could pay off her credit card debt and start saving for the future she said she wanted. Daniel, I made a mistake. A huge, terrible mistake. But I love you. I want to fix this. You can't fix this, Elise. You can't undo what you did with your boss. You can't reverse the money you spent on that relationship. And you can't take back the last 3 months. Don't be crude. Don't be naive. You made choices, and choices have consequences. This is what consequences look like. The consequences don't have to be this severe. We could go to counseling. We could work through this. We could have done that 3 months ago if you'd been honest with me instead of lying about emotional support. I was afraid to tell you. I knew you'd react like this. Like what? Like someone whose wife has been cheating on him? Like someone whose trust has been completely betrayed? How exactly did you expect me to react? I expected you to fight for our marriage. I did fight for our marriage, Elise. I fought for it every day for 8 years. I worked extra hours to pay for the things you wanted. I supported your career, your goals, your dreams. I was fighting for our marriage while you were having an affair with your boss. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? But she's already hung up. That evening, I meet Mark at his bar for a debriefing and a drink. The Broken Compass is busier than usual for a Tuesday night, filled with people who apparently have better things to do than sit at home contemplating the wreckage of their marriages. How are you holding up? Mark asks as he slides a beer across the bar. Better than expected. It's like watching a controlled demolition. Everything's falling down exactly the way it's supposed to. Any regrets about the coordinated approach? None. Victoria was right. They made choices, and choices have consequences. What's next? Next, I find a new apartment, finalize the divorce, and figure out how to be single again. Sounds like a plan. What about Elise and Grant? What about them? They've got each other. Isn't that what they wanted? Mark grins and refills my beer. Sometimes the best revenge is just stepping back and letting people deal with the consequences of their own actions. It's not revenge, I tell him. It's structural engineering. I identified the weak points, calculated the load-bearing capacity, and removed the supports that were holding up something that was already collapsing. And now? Now they get to see what they built together, without the safety net of their marriages to catch them when it falls down. My phone buzzes. Text from Victoria. Grant came home tonight to pack a bag. Asked if we could work things out. I told him to ask Elise for emotional support. I text back. How did he take that? About as well as you'd expect. He's staying at a hotel now. The irony is delicious. Any word on the employment investigation? They're both being terminated on Friday. Company policy on supervisor-subordinate relationships is very clear, and the evidence is overwhelming. So they'll both be unemployed and divorced by next week. And they'll have each other. Isn't that romantic? I finish my beer and think about romance, about emotional support, about the price of betrayal and the cost of consequences. Grant and Elise wanted to be together, and now they get their wish. They just get to be together without jobs, without spouses, and without the financial security that made their affair feel safe and consequence-free. They wanted emotional support. Now they get to find out how much support they can provide each other when the bills come due and the reality sets in. As I drive home to my empty house, I realize that I'm not angry anymore. I'm not hurt. I'm not betrayed. I'm not looking for revenge. I'm just tired and ready for this chapter of my life to be over so the next one can begin. Tomorrow, I'm going to look at apartments. This weekend, I'm going to start planning a future that doesn't include Elise or her emotional support needs. and Grant and Elise can figure out how to support each other. After all, that's what they wanted.